Hello everybody, James here. Story time with Dutch Mantell, episode 71. And guess what? We're going to do the plugs first like we always do. Dutch, you've got two fine books there.
Two great books. If you just buy these books, you read the stories or the chapters individually because they really don't lead from one chapter to the next. So if you got 10 minutes or 15 minutes, read a chapter, put it down, come back an hour later, pick it up, read the next chapter. I even read these books sometimes and laugh at myself. So,
and also, you've got a diploma.
I do have a diploma. I don't have one to show right now without digging. But you can get a diploma from the University of Dutch, and it's signed by the president, Dirty Dutch Mantell, and the provost, which is Zebekiah Coulter. So you can hang it on your wall. It comes ready to hang. And it's if you're a wrestling fan, you have these things in your house. People say, "Where'd you get this? Where'd you get this?" So it's a lot of good stuff. So if I was a wrestling fan, I would get me one.
I've got books, I've got T-shirts, I've got a podcast with Shane Douglas, the Franchise University with Shane Douglas, every single Tuesday at all your podcast locations and on YouTube. Shane Douglas Shane Douglas Official. I don't know what it is. Dutch. I'm tired. I'm tired.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry.
I was moaning at you beforehand, man. I'm tired.
Okay. I'll take pity on you today.
Good. I demand some pity. We've got two podcasts every Friday and every Tuesday. Good.
Wait a minute. How is the Shane podcast doing?
It's doing quite well, actually. The last week, it's really sprung up in the numbers.
Great talker. He's interesting, and he's good to make a trip with. Because when you make a trip, they can be long or short according to your company. So if the guy's not a good talker and he's just going to sit there, well, hell, you might as well go by yourself. Because, a lot of these guys, this is where I learned the business. Riding in the car with the veterans and they telling all these colorful stories and all this happened and that happened. And, when I got in the business, I thought that I was from the mid-Atlantic area. I thought there was only one wrestling promotion in the country. I didn't know they had a Georgia wrestling promotion. I didn't know they had a Florida or a Tennessee or an Alabama or Texas or Oklahoma. I didn't know that because I never really thought deeply into it when I was a kid. And then when they would bring somebody in, they'd show these different videos. And I was thinking, where in the hell do these videos get made? I didn't even call them videos. I called them, where's that guy from? I've never heard of this place. So I actually kind of smartened myself up as I went. I know people kind of looked at me. Well, I don't know. I think we all thought that. But anyway, they saw like this big monster coming in. I said, where'd they have this guy out for all these years? But it did create interest. And I really, really, I would like to get that feeling again of what wrestling to like an unexposed mind would feel like. So, and it's a great feeling. And you didn't see all these high moves and this, and they were just banging away at each other, but they had a goal. They wanted to win or they wanted to hurt somebody. So when you put that in your pipe and smoke it, it made a lot of sense. Of course, a lot of things look contrived, but I just overlooked that. I went for the story.
Do you know the first time I ever became aware of wrestling at all was two things. One, Big Daddy, because wrestling wasn't on TV anymore, but Big Daddy was still a celebrity and just everyone knew who he was. And the other one was I was probably like 5 or 6, and my sister took me to my school, and they were doing like a fair or something like that. Do you know what a tombola is?
A what?
We call it a tombola. Basically, it's a bucket with confetti in it. And it's a lucky dip kind of thing. And I just put my hand in, pulled out a few things for my 50 pence. And they were all wrestling cards. One was a Hulk Hogan card. There was the top of IRS. And there was the bottom of Bam Bam Bigelow. As far as the stickers. And I just remember looking at them and thinking, why is IRS so pale? And why is he wrestling in a shirt? And I didn't even know what wrestling was. But that was weirdly my first exposure to the WWF with these like Merlin or Panini stickers or whatever out of this.
But you were exposed to it with Big Daddy, right?
Yeah, not wrestling. I just knew that it's weird because he was a wrestler, but I didn't know what wrestling was. Because I'm like 4, 5, 6. I don't really know. Mm-hmm. But I still knew the name Big Daddy. And the first thing everyone always said about Big Daddy was, his real name was Shirley.
But he was over, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah, like Rover. I mean, like whatever Hulk Hogan was in the WWF in America in like in the mid-'80s. He's probably more popular here, Big Daddy was.
Yeah, a real big guy, right?
He wasn't that tall, but he was a great big fat guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I watched a few English wrestling matches where they had one announcer.
Ken Walton.
Where I thought it was great because say he did an arm drag and the announcer in American announcer, oh, yeah, he just did an arm drag. Well, hell, I know that. I just saw him do it. You don't have to tell me that he did it. I saw him do it. But this English announcer would lay out, and he would more or less keep telling the story as the match went on and how they battled back and forth. I think that's what American wrestling has lost a little bit and that is all WWE is going on right now, is story. But sometimes I think they talk about the match a little too much and leave the story behind. They get it in there because it's it's constant. And actually, after a while, it kind of irritates you.
I'm trying to think when that started. Is it? I remember when Michael Cole was on commentary, when he started coming on, and he seemed to talk incessantly and just say the most obvious stuff in the entire world. But I mean, I think with the WWF, they've been talking and talking and talking over, having no silence whatsoever since, I don't know, the early 90s, late 80s.
He was probably on the other end of that headset is Vince. And Vince is barking, say this, and say this, and say that. Regardless of what was happening in the ring, if somebody takes a hell of a spill outside the ring, hell, they could be talking about a movie and just forget all about the spill. Is the guy hurt? Hell, that was secondhand. But anyway, that's my criticism for that. Announcers, and I think 3 announcers on one show, way too much. They missed the color guy. They don't have a color guy now. So you used to have Lawler out there, or Jesse Ventura, or Bobby Heenan. See, you listen to it because Bobby and Lawler, they were entertaining as hell. So they would call the match, but they all had a different opinion than the host did. So they could bicker back and forth a little bit. Sometimes they took it too far, but at least it was entertaining.
Before we get onto the news,
a lot of news.
Have you seen any of the new episodes of Frasier yet?
Frasier?
Yeah.
No.
I used to love Frasier, but I can't bring myself to watch the new one because it's not going to be the same. I don't like remakes.
Same guys on it, Frasier?
It's just Kelsey Grammer, but everyone else is different.
Okay. But these are new.
Yes.
Hey, I'm so stuck back in my cave, I didn't even know they had Kelsey Grammer doing it. Well, okay. I'll take your word for it.
I thought I'd just ask you.
All right. What about the news this week? We had a lot of it.
How many pages did I send you today?
Oh, my God. I read it on computer.
It's like War and Peace, what I'm sending you.
Oh, my God. Okay, I got to get this out. I remember I mentioned it before that I may talk about it on the show.
Mm-hmm.
A fan wrote me and says, love the show, but can you ask James to slow down when he's talking so we can understand him? And I told you earlier, and you said, well, you said something about, well, how old is this guy or whatever. But when an English person speaks to an American in that English accent, and it's so precise, I used to even John Foley, who wasn't known as a great speaker, I'd say, John, what did you just say? Because I guess he threw all the lingo in there and all this other stuff. But they're not even talking about that. They're saying you're talking too fast. So I'm just asking you, can you kind of slow down? Because English people make normal Americans feel kind of stupid. So, and that's the feeling I get that you're giving some of these people.
Shall I give you the diplomatic
I understand
answer?
you. Yeah, give me the diplomatic
answer. Or shall I give you
answer.
the answer that I told you before we started recording?
No, I like the one you gave. Because it was,
I'll leave that. Okay, I'll try and say these things more like I'm Hannibal. I'm really struggling for every word. All right. Let's go for the news. That was the diplomatic answer anyway.
That's it.
Right,
okay. I asked the question. It's up to him now. I want you to ask me after every question, did you understand that? Okay, go ahead.
I'll do it like Ricky Morton. You understand me? You hear me? Okay.
We have some news about Ricky Morton.
Oh yes, he'll come up a little bit later, but we'll save that for the good times down the road. On like page 94, I think we've got Ricky Morton being mentioned, but we'll carry on from there. The first bit of news, I don't know if it's the biggest bit of news, but it's the first bit of news. CM Punk has been turned down by WWE. Punk's intention to return to the company was reported in the latest edition of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, with sources from his camp stating the two sides were in talks. Dave Meltzer provided an update on this situation during a special Tuesday night edition of Wrestling Observer Radio. Here are the quotes from Mr. Meltzer. They turned him down, Meltzer said. The decision was a no. He wanted to go there and the decision was a no. I mean, it can always change, and it was brought up to me that there was no such thing as no forever when it comes to WWE, but it's no for now. It's Vince's decision, Vince, Nick Khan, Paul Levesque, and obviously they decided that the negatives outweighed the positives. About 10 months ago, they were talking again. At the point, he was still under contract to AEW, and I was told that would be a no. But it's easy to say it's a no because there's no chance he could ever get past the contracts and stuff. It could always change, and it was made very clear to me that if WWE's business went down, they know it's a card that they could play, but is it worth it? And just to add that before, because I know you've got a lot to say on this, Meltzer also noted that WWE decided against bringing Punk back in 2019 when Punk ended up doing punditry for Fox at the time, and then also he was at a backstage event, in April, whenever it was, April 24th. It says when he was visiting backstage and he was thrown out. So you've heard apparently what WWE has to say on Punk. Are they right?
Well, I don't think Vince made this decision all on his own. They said it was a panel that decided this. And what they're saying, as much as I hate to agree with that damn Meltzer, but from a business standpoint, if you really look at it, Punk can't help them that much because they're already doing really, really good with their own talent and their own ideas. Where Punk would help them is if they needed one guy that was really kind of over, and then Punk showed up unannounced, and that might, I don't know if he would pop it, but he wouldn't hurt it. So I would think, and I predicted Punk would be going back, but think in your own head. You're on the creative team. You bring in Punk in. You don't bring him in as a first match or second match or third match or even the middle of the card. You got to bring him in one of the last matches. So who do you move over? I mean, you're not going to bring this guy in for just now. We used to be able to bring a guy in for a week, 2 weeks, a month, then he disappears. But he disappears strongly, so in another 3 months, you can use him again in the same role. But he may not be interested in that. I think these sides I don't think they are part on money. I think they are they apart on creativity, because he quit the last time in 2013, I think.
Oh, I think it was 14, early 14.
It could have been 14, but in Chicago, and I've talked about this before, I was there. I was trying to get in there to talk to Vince myself over some wild idea I had. Never got in. He took up Vince for the whole day because, he has a line outside his office for guys wanting to talk to him, pitch ideas. So I was getting ready to pitch one. And I never did end up pitching that idea because Vince wasn't there the next week because Punk had really upset their balance. They don't like that. I don't blame them because they had a lot of, when Punk was there, he had a future and he was involved in it. But when he says, I'm going to make this next pay-per-view and I'm going to give my notice, I'm going to leave, which he did, which is the right thing to do. But he upset the creative plans that they had for him up to that point. And he was mad because he wasn't the main event. When did he quit?
So if it was 2014, so what did he quit? Just before or after the Royal Rumble, so it was very early on.
And I don't even think he was mad about his payoff. You see a lot of guys, they bitch a lot about big shows because I should have got this. He wasn't even bitching about that. He was pitching that he wasn't the main event.
Mm-hmm.
Now, being the main event doesn't pay your bills. It's what you get paid that pays your bills. Hell, I've seen a lot of guys, and I know this for a fact, the guy could be the main event and get paid less than the guy in the semifinal.
Mm-hmm.
It's how their contracts are geared. But he was kind of pissed off. And I think he was pissed off at Undertaker or something.
It was Triple H to a point. So apparently the quote that was given, because I think Punk was going to be wrestling Triple H at that WrestleMania. Now, this is the WrestleMania, I believe, if I'm just looking at it right. This is the one where Hulk Hogan comes out and calls the building the wrong name, of course. But this is also the where Brock Lesnar beats The Undertaker, and especially this is Daniel Bryan wins the title in that triple threat match at the end of the show. So it was a stacked card enough as it was, really. But Punk was supposed to be fighting Triple H, and I think whatever was said, the line was, Punk said to Triple H, I don't need to work with you to get over, you need to work with me to get over. So there you go. So, I mean, Triple H, I don't think is Phil's biggest fan.
Well, that could have hurt him because I think Punk is a little difficult to work with. But I don't know him coming, and I predicted he would go to WWE. I didn't think they'd be that pissed off at him. I think he'd be a great addition just to show up. I didn't think they would advertise him. They don't even have to advertise him because their fan base, if he did this in Chicago, they would fall out of the seats because they see him doing something in wrestling that's going to make news. Most of those fans in Chicago are smart fans anyway. They got to be. Working in Chicago is brutal. It's like working in Philadelphia sometimes. All those fans are smart. And you go out there, brother, they roast your ass. I don't care what you've done. You could have done something 5 years earlier. Hey, you drunk bass, you got locked up lately, or you get a DUI again. No, you're useless. So the fans, you have heat with them legitimately if you've done something wrong. But I don't know how you combat that. So, but anyway, I predicted he would go. He's not going to go, but I want to go on record by saying I think we'll see him, CM Punk, within a year and a half. Because, and I've sped that up a little bit, I think he has one final run in WWE that they could make special. I really do. And if they got around him, he wants to go out on top. This is his last match ever, in WWE. I think they'd have to say that because, and we're going to talk about something else in a minute too about the last matches, but I think they could make that special one run, and I think it's coming up in about a year and a half. Now, and I hate to kind of agree with Meltzer. Oh my God. I'm gonna stab myself right now. Well, but in that particular instance, I think he's right.
Well, maybe
Meltzer doesn't like me.
You don't like each other.
Well, Meltzer, he's never liked me. You know why he didn't like me?
No.
Well, that's how he worked his way into the business by getting to know certain wrestlers. And these certain wrestlers, if they had a bitch against another wrestler, they'd let it be known to Meltzer. And then he'd go on his show, and it was inside info. And then he'd get another one and get another one. And a lot of wrestlers just wanted to be mentioned. So they would call him up with whatever's going on. That's how he knew a lot of stuff was going on. I don't know how many of these people he paid. I'm sure he paid some of them. But a lot of them just did it for their own personal gain, which is not, I don't think that's, I can't say it's right or not. It is business. And most wrestlers are actually in it for themselves because let's face it, wrestling is a short-lived business. Hardly anybody gets into the business saying, oh, I'm going to retire in this business. You can't do that. You can't start at 20 and say, oh, I'm going to be done by 40. I'm going to be out of the business. Well, you might think that. But when 40 comes around, you've got a couple of kids, a house note, car payment, living, groceries, paying bills, insurance. Well, then you kind of need an income. I mean, being done at 40, you could be, but you'd have to save a lot of money to do it. And you'd have to do something else, of course. That's my inside.
It sounded like you said you went house, but then it sort of sounded like houseboat.
House. I didn't say houseboat.
I like the idea of you on a houseboat at 40.
Yeah. I'm out there.
Okay, but with Meltzer,
we might have to. We might have to put up a caption, a closed caption thing.
Houseboat vision. Right. So,
hey, somebody complained about my cigar.
Yes. Why?
They said, "Why don't you light it? Why don't you do this?" I don't know. Why don't I go fly a plane? One thing is I can't. Second is I don't really smoke cigars. I'm more of a cigar chewer. So I want to know people that don't like my cigar or people that do. Write me at dirtydutchmantell@gmail.com. You should know it now by memory. And just ask me some questions.
You didn't quite qualify why you don't think Meltzer likes you, though, in that sense. I know why, there's certain people who would give him information, I'm sure. Did he ever make an overture towards you to ask for information?
No, not really.
Well, why do you think he doesn't like you then?
Why didn't he like me? He came to a Smoky Mountain show. And he wanted to talk to me. And I brushed him off because he had said some things negatively toward me. And I didn't much appreciate it. So I refused to talk to him. And he didn't make any overtures to talk to me either. So apparently he didn't give a crap. I didn't give a crap. With nothing to be gained by that. So I took that as he didn't much like me. Maybe I took it wrong. I don't know.
Well, there you go.
But he has blocked me on X, on Twitter. He has blocked me.
Does that break your heart?
Kills me, brother. It just kills me.
Right. Before we get off the old Punk tip for now, and goodness me, I know we've got a million news stories, but we'll get through them as much as we can. Booker T said this about Punk recently, and I think it mostly goes to what you were saying before. So, Here's what he said in wherever he said it, probably his podcast. At this point in time right now, when everything is going so great, not just from an in-ring perspective, but an out-of-ring perspective as well, as far as the company, the WWE, is doing great, what does CM Punk add to WWE right now at this point? If CM Punk worked this contract in AEW and it was coming up and Punk didn't sign with AEW and WWE actually got in and got him and boom, I think we would have something. But CM Punk didn't just leave WWE, he got fired from WWE. He didn't just leave AEW, he got fired with cause from AEW. What value does a person like that bring to your company? People say, well, you got a lot of people that's going to love it. He's got a lot of fans that are going to love it. Yeah, he's got a lot of fans, but those fans actually mean nothing when it comes to the big picture. Because the fans that love him didn't bump the ratings that much on AEW, where was that much more significant than it was before he actually got there? On CM Punk as a wrestler, I don't know what cool matches you're talking about. He must be talking to his co-host there. What I'm saying is CM Punk, I mean, his better wrestling days are behind. All right, that's just a fact. He's not getting any younger. CM Punk is what, now 44, 45? But the one thing I am saying is, has CM Punk lost a step? Is CM Punk the same CM Punk that he was in WWE? Was that match saying Punk against Samoa Joe, excuse me, I'll reread that. Was that match, I'm going to have to add this in, at the Wembley show, CM Punk versus Samoa Joe, the same as they had in Ring of Honor? No, it isn't. So, Booker T's partially saying CM Punk's too old, and partially WWE's doing too well to put up with him.
Didn't I just kind of say that too?
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, I am agreeing with him. He's at that age to where, like a young guy shows up, 18, 20 years old, and he hears that this guy is 45. Well, that's his father's age. So he loses some of his coolness right there. But I still think there's one run left in him. If they make that known, there's one run and he's going after this, which has got to be the world title. But I don't know if they want to end that story with him not getting the world title. Mm-hmm. See what I mean? Mm-hmm. I mean, it has or you can make, I don't know. It's up to creative, but I think they could do one last run with him and make it work.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here slightly before we get off Punk. I sort of think in a sense that Booker T's missing the point here, in the sense that you can... Yeah, WWE's doing really well at the moment. You know, they're selling out buildings, house show attendance is doing fantastic, etc. But, I mean, you can rest on your laurels for too long. I mean, you can, not to sound like Vince Russo here too much, but you constantly want to be throwing in curveballs.
You know who you sound like?
Go on, bro.
Vince Russo.
Okay. Hey, bro. And I said to him, bro, that look, you always want to... Punk's like the most talked about person in the industry still. I think you still want to shock the system constantly. Hey, you thought this was happening, but now this is happening. Take it to a new edge, get the people talking about you again, because if you just like rest on your laurels for so long, then eventually it gets a bit stale and boring. The Bloodline thing at the moment's a bit...
Yep.
You know, it's cooled off somewhat now. So what's the new big thing to shock the system?
Okay, this is what I'm saying. If Punk goes in, does Roman Reigns, does he move over? Does he lose the title to somebody else? Or what about Gunther? What's Gunther going to do?
What about Cody? I mean...
And Cody.
And The Rock, if he's coming back.
And there's... where do you place him and make 100% use of his... People, he does have insane fans, but I don't know what he really adds to the overall picture. But he damn sure makes that whole card look stacked, because everybody on that card has a story, has a journey, and I don't know exactly where he fits in. But if they need to plug something and they can't take anybody else out of their angles, out of their stories, if they can plug CM Punk in there, it may work. But again, that's not my decision, but I'm interested in what they do with him.
Next on the agenda, FTR, the bizarre tag team title drop to Big Bill and Ricky Starks on last week's AEW Collision. You watched it? It was a very short match.
Yes, I did watch it. Heard it was a short match because which one was hurt of FTR?
Cash Wheeler. He was the guy with the ribs. He's also the guy who you can see waving a gun around on various freeways here and there.
Well, but I did like Big Bill. And Ricky, is his name Ricky Starks?
Yeah.
There's something to that guy. And I think there's something to this tag team. Before Big Bill became Big Bill, he had a run in WWE, but it was somewhat tainted because he was with a guy named, what's his name? Ismo?
He's Tickle Me Enzo Amore.
Enzo Amore, which I saw not too long ago at a signing up north somewhere, I think somewhere. And I think both of them didn't understand the business. They didn't understand the politics of the business. They didn't understand the culture and the business they got in. I think they thought they were just going to go right to the top, and Big Bill had the size and Enzo had the mouth. And they thought that would take. They didn't know that running that mouth, to me, in that dressing room remains in that dressing room. Not with wrestlers. If they're saying things openly about the booker or how they're being used, that's one thing in the business you don't do. You can't let your competition know, and they are a competition. You can't let your competition know how you feel about certain things you're doing, because they will tell somebody else and somebody else will tell somebody else. And then finally it gets back to Triple H pretty quick. And now he begins reassigning things to whoever said it. And if you say too much that shouldn't be known, Triple H, he gets it in his head. He gets a negative image of you. And then he decides that maybe going with these people is not the right thing. And I base that on immaturity and lack of experience. There's nobody, you don't tell people what you're thinking out loud. Just keep it to yourself and go on. That extends a lot of livelihoods in any business. Don't tell the bosses what you're really thinking. I think common sense should tell you that.
So they were quite well known. I can't remember what it was called. Big Cass. I think he was in WWE at the time. So him and Enzo were quite well known in the locker room at the time as complaining about creative loudly to anyone who listened.
Well, they were talking to each other, I think, but loud enough for somebody else to kind of hear what they're saying. I don't think they're just going to go in there and say this, but they're talking individually to each other. Now I'm watching, he's called Big Bill now, Big Cass, Big Bill. And he does work pretty good for a big man. He doesn't try to do anything that he can't do. He's not flying around the ring. And actually this short match, FTR got beat, but they got beat in a way that really doesn't hurt them. This looked like an old school match. And I think somebody has taken over some of these matches in AEW because some of them actually make sense. And of course, we know what the creativity in WWE has done, because if you're really looking at, and I'm all over the place now.
No.
If you're really looking at WWE matches, they've shortened them down and they put, to make the time, little vignettes in there because of things that are coming. And we'll talk about those things in a minute. That to me is the mark of a great wrestling show. Remember I talked earlier when I was a kid, I didn't know they had other companies in other areas of the country. Well, they're almost doing the same thing, but with people they know. Like I would see as a kid, somebody from Atlanta that's beating up somebody on their TV. So when I see that, well, that doesn't look like the TV studio I'm used to watching. It's another studio doing the same thing, but it's like, where is this place? So that creates interest in me. So I think they can do something with this Big Bill and Ricky Starks and let FTR try to come back and get him, because even watching the match, the finish was old school. He got hurt. He can't continue. So two of them, they beat the other guy. That makes total sense. You can't play basketball with 4 guys on a team. The other team has 5. You just can't do it. So if they make you play and you get beat, well, that's expected. You may not want it, but that's what you get.
Yeah, I remember I watched it this morning. I remember thinking, this makes too much sense for AEW. Hang on, so a guy's injured and then he loses because of the injury.
Yeah.
It's like, huh?
Yeah, and that doesn't hurt you. I don't know why they don't do a finish like that. A guy gets hurt, his shoulder gets hurt, his knee gets hurt. He can't make the tag, and he said he just can't get there, so he gives up. He taps out. Well, that makes sense, because you see it in other sports. In football, when a guy gets hurt, what happens? You go out there and you take him out of the game, like soccer. Mm-hmm. Somebody turns their ankle, they can't play, so you take him off. And then if you take a couple of key players off the team, they lose, but they didn't lose because they're a better team beat them. They lost because their stars were out. So losing a match doesn't mean anything if it makes sense. Because if you're trying to come back from that, now we'll see how over they are. But it was a good match, and they did an old school finish, which I liked.
Next one. I don't know how much we've got to say this. I printed out the whole deal, but I'll do the quick version. NWA sort of bringing back the territories, sort of, in a sense. They did a press release a couple of days ago. National Wrestling Alliance embarks on historic territory system revival under leadership of President William Patrick Corgan. And the first one will be NWA Exodus Pro Midwest, which is led by NWA's World Heavyweight Champion EC3. There's like 3 paragraphs here, but essentially that's what it is they want to start making NWA like affiliates of like certain indies, I think, and they're going to call this a new territory system. What do you think?
Well, just hearing it, and I just read about it this morning. You sent me that clip to read. It's a tall order to try to bring that back. I think they're way behind in the game. AEW, they have national TV. So I don't know where they're going to get TV. And establishing the territorial system sounds, I don't know if it even sounds that good. And I wish them luck. So where are they going to open up their first office?
It says Pro Midwest, which is EC3's deal. This press release says from Cleveland, Ohio. I don't know. I mean, I suspect that might be where it is. In a move marking a pivotal moment in the history of the National Wrestling Alliance, President Billy Corgan has announced the revival of the promotion's territorial system, a cherished tradition for the NWA, which harkens back to the roots of pro wrestling and the Alliance's formation 75 years ago. The move is aimed at fostering collaboration, unity, and the development of future wrestling stars. The inaugural affiliate territory to join the initiative is NWA Exodus Pro Midwest. I don't know exactly where it is, but it's Cleveland, Ohio, it says from the top, so maybe it's there.
It's kind of Midwest.
Yeah.
Well, I think they need to pick the hottest places that they used to have. But I think some of those, unless they have TV, some of those areas have been badly abused, and it's going to be hard to bring those fans back. The old saying is, how you going to keep them down on the farm when they've seen the lights of Broadway? They've seen WWE, and they've seen the show, how well it's produced. I mean, it's a finely tuned theatrical exhibition of a sport that's worked. I don't know. I think people look at that, but what makes a territory go is stories. They got to get in there. They got to get one guy over and then just shoot the heels at it. That's the basic thing. But you're starting from scratch. So you're going to grow if you grow at all. You're going to grow in small bursts. But can your owner withstand the growing pains and the financial pains? Because he's got to pay off the money he draws or the money he makes off a TV syndication. Is he happy with just making that money? And I know he wants to grow, but that's a tough order to fill. So I'll be interested to see how they do.
Yeah, I wonder if it's going to be something like what the NWA was in the early 2000s, where essentially it was just a few like indies here and there. Because I remember there was one called like NWA Wildside, and there were a few like NWA affiliates here and there, but they were all just small indie promotions. And I think for this to work, really, to get anywhere, that you'd need several promotions the level of an MLW or an Impact or a Ring of Honor or something like that. You'd need to have like promotions of that level, then have one champion for all those mid-size promotions, and then all together, the sum of the parts would be greater whole than separate in that sense. And then maybe that could start challenging for AEW for a second, for the top two promotion in the country kind of thing. But if it's just a load of indies with the NWA name, I don't know how they sort of like get value out of that.
I don't either. So, Billy, good luck. What you're doing. If your show is good, I'll say it's good. If it sucks, I'll say it sucks. But wrestling is no, it's not even a sport. It's a measure of people getting over, but they get over by good creative, and that takes a while. So are you going to carry fans from the first week all the way through, or will you open up with a kind of a little boost and all of a sudden that tails off? See, what people are judging by is the level of wrestlers you have and comparing that to the best in the industry, which is WWE. And then AEW is about 60% of what WWE is, maybe 50%. I mean, AEW likes to say they're the industry leader. I don't know what they base that on.
And just before we get off this, I want to say NWA's got a pay-per-view coming up in a couple of weeks, NWA Samhain, so have a look for that pay-per-view in the coming, I think it's October 28th, in fact, so
okay.
I'll give a little plug.
How many buys you think they go get on this pay-per-view?
I have no idea.
And how much does it take? Well, you remember the story I told last week about Dixie, I think, a week or two ago. She never gave us a number.
Yes.
She said, well, if the pay-per-view was up 10% from the earlier one. And I never understood that. And nobody ever found out. Well, somebody may have found out, but
we had the name of the guy, and I can't remember who the guy's name was, but I wrote it down and I told it you, and you said that was the guy who was feeding you the wrong information for the pay-per-view.
Yeah, it's easy to find. I didn't know him. He wasn't there long. On the first pay-per-view that TNA did, brother, everybody was through the roof. We said he come back with preliminary reports that it did like 80 or 90,000 pay-per-views. And of course, they're ecstatic. Those pay-per-views were like $35. How much money is that? Say 80,000 times $35. How much is that?
Oh my God. 1 second. Hang on. 1 sec. Right. So what was it? 80,000 times. Right. So 80,000.
It was $35.
Times 35 equals 2.8 million. But you've got to divide that by 2.
Yes, but that's a hell of a payday.
That's nearly 1.5 million per week they would have been making if they got 80,000 a week for those weekly shows.
Well, okay. Say they're making I think we was doing a pay-per-view a week. So even if it got to 50,000, that's still a hell of a payday. Mm. You picking up that money.
Yeah, $4 million a month or something, maybe.
But they didn't do 80,000. They finally got it down to where, and he was feeding them this information. They hired him out of, I guess, was WCW still
Clown
around?
College? Sorry.
Was WCW still around? They were, weren't they?
No. TNA opened because WCW was closed.
Okay.
So they closed the year before.
Because the guy had worked for WCW. That's why he was there. Huh. And everybody was excited. They went out and bought a bunch of stuff. Now they're saying, we can't pay for it. What are we going to do? That's actually, and Jeff Jarrett quit the company about 6 months to a year after that. He said, I just can't take it anymore.
Jerry
did. And then, but Jerry wanted Jeff to go with him, and Jeff had put all his money into TNA, so he couldn't leave. So, but they got through it. They got the Carters to buy in, and they ran for a while. But I think the Carters did make money, and they wouldn't let any figures out, which was a mystery to me. You know, the whole time I worked in TNA, I never met the old man Carter.
No, was he? Or the mother?
I think he was, but I was too busy doing other stuff,
sitting in catering. So, did he not go to catering then, Bob?
No, he didn't go. But never met him. I never met Dixie Carter's mother, and they were nice people. I guess people said some other people met them, said they were nice people. I mean, why would you say somebody's an asshole? If you just met them, they owned the company. But they weren't that. I don't think they understood, or Dixie Carter didn't understand actually the business she was getting into. Because she was a wrestling fan from wherever she grew up, and she watched WWE or F, saw these big crowds, heard all these big pay-per-views, and wanted to get into the business. So she did. And she was met with what she was met with. So, but I will say one thing for TNA. I worked for them 9 years, which is a long time for me, a long time for anybody to work for a wrestling company. But I worked for them that long. And when old Hulk Hogan came in, they disbanded the entire creative team, except for Vince. And which surprised me, because Vince and Hulk don't like each other. But that's the way it played out. I hadn't said too much about that, but that's the way it played out.
For a future episode, actually, because ages ago I'd written a script saying the trouble with TNA, and we never got through all the questions, so that can be for a future episode. We'll go through that. But for now, with all the news, next one is NXT versus AEW ratings war. Mm-hmm. Now, this had gripped the wrestling internet community for some reason. I don't really know why. It wasn't. People found this more interesting than I did, apparently. But AEW was going head-to-head once again with NXT. AEW Dynamite was being moved from Wednesday to Tuesday for 1 week only, so they came up with a Tuesday title episode, and then NXT got wind of it, and then, all the back and forth as far as, well, we've got this, well, we've got that, well, we're going to go commercial-free for 30 minutes, well, we're going to go commercial-free for an hour, well, we've got an overrun, well, we've got a bigger overrun, well, we've got Edge's in-ring debut, well, we've got whatever they had. The Undertaker turning up. In fact, I'll mention more of that, but AEW must have known they were in for a beating, surely, because AEW's cooling off now, and WWE and NXT especially, the ratings are actually very good for NXT at the moment, the best they've been in years. But I want to bring to your attention Tony Khan, who had, as we call, diarrhea of the keyboard on Tuesday, where he just decided he was going to be just tweeting all day. And one of the things he tweeted was a picture saying "bald asshole" with is still from Curb Your Enthusiasm, and then he texts the following: "I have a message for them being Triple H and Shawn Michaels. See you tonight at a special Tuesday night AEW Dynamite title fight Tuesday at 8 p.m." That kind of thing, and he was really going all hell for leather on Twitter. What do you think of Tony's tweeting?
I think it's... What do you say about that? He's almost like a 16-year-old kid. He's out tweeting, see you tonight, this, that, and the other, because he made a big deal that AEW beat WWE in the ratings on a Tuesday night about a year or two ago.
Yeah, the last year they had a head-to-head and AEW beat NXT.
And AEW, they beat their drums over that, which, yeah, you could make that. I would say something about it too, but they kept it up. They're going to, and then finally WWE moved, I think, from a Thursday or to a Tuesday.
No, Wednesday. Yeah. So NXT went from Wednesday to Tuesday. Because they were losing fairly handily to Dynamite every week, and then this week Dynamite moved from Wednesday to Tuesday because they were preempted.
Mm-hmm. Well, Tony made a big deal about that, and I don't think that WWE creative heads, Shawn Michaels for NXT, and then Triple H, they wanted to bury AEW. And you see, one thing about a war is you got to know a war is going on before somebody can win it. See, WWE never thought they were in a war. Even when they moved nights to keep from running head up with AEW, because that's going to hurt both of them, really. And WWE had the foresight to say, no, let's don't divide the fans, because quite naturally we will, but we'll be drawing less and they'll be drawing less. And if they beat us, it's not really a big deal, but it was to Tony that he moved the giant. So this time they loaded that show up big time. They put Paul Heyman was there. The Undertaker was there. Booker T is the announcer. Who else was there?
LA Knights, Cody Rhodes, John Cena. Becky Lynch was, she didn't wrestle, but she was on commentary, I think. And Becky Lynch has proved to be the biggest numbers draw as of recent as well. Dominic Mysterio was there, the boy who stole your name. The dirty bastard. Boy. And but yeah, so you've got all the WWE people who were over the last couple of months really bolstering NXT to the best ratings they've had in years. You've got all these superstars: Cody Rhodes, John Cena, Paul Heyman, The Undertaker coming out and chokeslamming Bron Breakker at the end of it as well.
Very good.
Yeah.
Old school. The all Undertaker's got to do is show up, and the place will go nuts. Creative knew that. If I had written that down, yeah, they're going to go crazy. And he rides that bike around the ring, which I think the biker deal he did when he actually did it on the show, he didn't get over doing that. But they recognize he likes motorcycles, so he rode around the ring, got out, and went face to face with Bron Breakker, which made Bron Breakker look like a huge, huge star. Because he's standing, sharing a ring with a legend, the Undertaker. And I say this all the time. Sometimes you can get over just by osmosis, just by being there. So somebody saw that Bron Breakker was on his way to being a big star. Undertaker's not a good talker. Never has been. But what he said was to the point, and then you had action. And Undertaker, I loved his interview, what he said. I don't know who wrote it for him, but it's short, to the point. He said, yeah, you're going to be a big star in this business one day. But let me tell you one thing, and everybody's waiting for the answer. Not today. and then punched him, which was a great looking punch. And Von Breaker didn't go up and start fighting him and going back and forth. One punch, and then he staggered into the choke slam, up, down, we're gone. Great way to end the show. And I can see why they beat AEW, because that was actually a Raw they gave you on NXT. So, but NXT, they drew about 30 or 40% less.
Well, I'll give you exactly the rating. So, AEW Dynamite, they had Edge's in-ring debut for AEW, Adam Copeland, excuse me, I've even written Edge, versus Luchasaurus, Orange Cassidy regaining the AEW International title from Rey Fenix, because Phoenix was injured, so it was a quick match, and Bryan Danielson versus Swerve Strickland. NXT averaged 921,000, and AEW Dynamite averaged 609.
Yep. Well, the numbers tell you all you need to know. Actually, this was the best NXT show I've ever seen, but it should have been, because it wasn't NXT. It was more like Raw or SmackDown when they got the big stars that's there. But the NXT stars that interacted with the WWE stars are now bigger because of it. So I think it was a good show. I didn't watch the AEW show, and it was probably a good show, but it's presentation more than actual wrestling. Because Undertaker, he made a point. You'll be a big star one day, but one thing, something, not today. And the people said, "Oh boy!" And then I punch. That's how it would happen on the street. You know, all of a sudden you're talking's over, bam, and knocked him down, went up. And Von Breaker, he felt it too. You could tell he felt honored to be in that ring with Undertaker. So
I'll say two more things very briefly. We'll move on to the next thing, which is also AEW based. Is one, I do want to make a point that AEW Dynamite was definitely on the back foot anyway, because it was an unfamiliar day, and it was even on TBS, not TNT. But, you know, they made a big deal about it changing days. But whenever a show changes a day, no matter how much publicity you put behind it, a lot of people just aren't going to tune in out of habit or lack of habit for watching. But the other thing I want to just harp on is Tony Khan doing the tweets. And the way he does it, and he's done it so many times before, is like when he's doing all these tweets taking shots at WWE, and yes, WWE's taken shots at Tony and AEW as well over the years, but Tony, the way he does it, he might as well be flying a little flag saying, "I'm the number 2 promotion, I'm acting like the number 2 promotion," and it just, it's not even like the Eric Bischoff thing where he used to go and, you know, like crap all over WWF on the commentary. It doesn't have that same sort of sting to it. It just feels too petty when Tony does it, and it also feels like that AEW's now slipped further down in people's estimations, and it's just seeming a bit desperate on Tony's part to try and stay. I don't know. He doesn't seem to be doing himself any favors here.
They put out a video. It's Tony's birthday.
I saw it, the dance.
Tony, and he gathered everybody around him or whoever that showed up, I guess. And they were on the little stage in front of the big screen, I think, and they all sang "Happy Birthday" to Tony. And I'm thinking, who gives a shit about Tony Khan's birthday? Really? And, you know, he went around, and he's a hugger anyway. And there was Cesaro out raising his hand and with his partner. And I don't get it. I don't think that helps his image. He doesn't look like an owner of a big company.
Does he look like he's buying friends?
Well, if I had a contract there and for $100,000, $200,000, and I'm not on half the shows, I don't got to go, I'd ride that duck to the damn bird fell out of the sky. It's what I would do. And that's what they do. They cater to Tony, I guess, and put some ideas in his head. But all of a sudden he has a better idea. He wants to. And I don't know if if he told them to to record the party, but it was recorded, and it really looked like a high school promotion, really. So I think he hurt the whole image. I think he wants to be out there on TV so bad, but he just can't quite do it.
Did you see? I'm not going to play the clip, but I can't even remember what he said. He basically botched the guy's name. It was like a Greek named guy. Let me find it 1 second. But it really made me laugh. 1 sec. Okay, we're back. I've actually found it. I'm going to cover up the video because it's AEW. So here we go. He's trying to... I don't know what he's trying to... Yanis... Here we go.
The Greek Freak!
Don't even know what he's saying.
No.
Greek Freak! The Greek Freak!
The Greek Freak.
Right, who's the Greek Freak?
I don't know. I don't know who that is.
Okay, let me find out who the Greek Freak is. 1 sec. So, Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Never heard of him.
No. Could you spell it?
No, I can spell the Greek Freak, but
there you go. It's like the Greek Freak. Blah, 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 blah. He's too excited to be on TV. Right, moving off. Right, so in fact, we're not moving off at all. Dave Meltzer.
Okay, did you show that?
No, I didn't. I put your face over it, so we didn't show it at all. So, the next one is Dave Meltzer again, saying AEW is cold. Many people are saying it wouldn't hurt to promote outside of social media either, because as we know at the moment, AEW is struggling to sell tickets. I think there was whatever show it was, Edge either debuted on, or the Tuesday one, I can't remember, but it was only 2,500 people were in the building. We're having a lot of video footage of people being at AEW shows showing, it's relatively full one side, and then everywhere else it's just empty chairs. And as I
saw one video where the people were at a live match, and up in the the Lux box suites, they had a big TV in there, and it was tuned to Raw, or it was tuned to a WWE show. So, and the camera went up. You saw the people in the ring. And the camera moved over, and all of a sudden up to the box suites, and they were sitting in there, and they were watching Raw.
Oh no! Well, I mean that says it all, doesn't it? AEW collision numbers are now consistently lower than when TNT used to run old movies in the time slots. Now, it also doesn't help that WWE has been running a lot of pay-per-views, but the fact is that they're going to be running a lot of pay-per-views on Saturdays, all of them, in fact, plus NXT takeovers and such. So, Dave Meltzer said the following: they are cold, boy, are they cold, and how to change that? Man, that's hard to do. Edge was there at Collision last night, and it didn't move a lot of tickets. Edge is a good performer, and he's a good talker and everything like that, but he's not CM Punk as far as a game changer. Meltzer also added it's going to be hard for AEW to change how cold they are right now. He says it's not the end of the world, but they should get a good TV deal, and he doesn't worry about AEW's future and all that, but to get it back to where it was a year ago will be very, very difficult. Now, speaking of somebody who has been more than once in a relatively cold promotion and been hired as the booker, and then turned it around somewhat, is you. You did it with Florida, you did it with 2 Puerto Rican territories, and it's a good point. When a promotion is cold, what actually works, if anything?
Well, I preach this time and time again. If you go into a territory, now this is, the times have changed now, because they're not looking for instant ratings. These territories were looking for a rating to make them look better on TV, but they were looking to sell tickets. They were trying to get their house show business up. I didn't even deal with pay-per-views. So I've taken over some territories, and they were dead on their ass. And with Puerto Rico, I didn't bring anybody in because nobody wanted to go because they heard how bad the territory was. So I'm sitting down there like this, like, And I've told this story 100 times. I said, I'm going to the beach. And I grabbed me a bottle of Malibu rum, go to the beach. And Senor Malibu had some great ideas. after about 2 hours on the beach, drinking Malibu.
He'd take a while to warm up, wouldn't he? As a
co-booker. But he'd say something out of the blue, and I'd hear it, and I said, "Yeah, I can do that." So I turned one territory around in about 3 months. They had another company there, run by Carlos Colon, and I started at a 2.6. And they had like an average of a 8 or a 9. And when I took over, I didn't bring anybody in, but then our ratings trying to come up a little bit, and Carlos would drop a little bit. Then I'd come up, and finally, about 2 months, they were like the same. They were like we split the rating. It was like a 5 and a 5. And then I brought Kane in, and I went boop, jumped up, and they were going nuts. And then the next week it dropped back down, and then the third week it popped up, my rating for my company, and then it never dropped for another 2.5 years. I went in, I had a rating one time, I didn't have it, the show had. It was like a 22. And it's the same system, I guess. And Carlos would have like a 10. They should be happy with a 10. They don't usually get that. But wrestling got hot, and I just created an atmosphere that was entertaining and plus had a story. And I went with, I put a guy in charge of my company, Savio Vega, who was really, he tried to be a nice guy, but you knew he was just a no good bastard. Everything he tried to make you think I'm doing this for you, but then you'd read through it. Oh, he's doing it for himself. And I had a great video guy there. His name was Moody. And the reason I named him Moody was he was a moody bastard. He'd come in the morning, like Monday, he's all moody. And then I'd kind of be up and running around. And I noticed he was moody. And then finally, he felt like killing himself on Mondays. And then on Tuesdays, after listening to his crap, I felt like killing myself too. So let's just do it. Wednesday, I wanted to kill him and myself at the same time. But Wednesdays, he would always pick up, and he did some great video packages, and that makes entertaining TV. So I had to put up with him and put up with his moves, but he produced. So I did. And again, I appreciate his patience. You look at what you got and you work with what you got. And it started to move, and people actually still talk about it. Because I would go to those big stadium shows and really not bring anybody in. I'd bring some people in just to give it the impression it was a big show. One guy I brought in was Rick Steiner, Braun Breaker's father. Brought him in and put him in like the 4th or 5th match. But it gave the appearance of, a big show. So, and I remember guys would say, well, what can you pay me? And I'd give myself, I'll give you this. They said, well, I was looking for $5,000 a match. I said, well, you need to keep looking because you're not getting $5,000 a match because if you're not even in a main storyline. And then when I said you're not getting 5,000, I'd get them, but it was nowhere close to 5,000 because I don't blame them asking. Ask for as much as you think you can get. But I'm going to say, if I walked in there and told them you want 5,000 match, they'd look at me and said, why'd you even talk to him? And I would have no answer. So we'd like to have you down here, but not at that price. So, and WWE was trying to work with us then. And I remember I got Kane, and he was about the only big star we ended up getting, period. And he didn't want to come. I don't blame him. Because I had him in the other company. But he was the one that's when the ratings jumped up and stayed up. That was just announcing Kane was going to be in the building. So,
tonally speaking, though, Because we're talking very generally here, but specifically, so whatever, let's say Carlos's company, whatever it was beforehand, when you went in there, what were the tonal booking changes did you make? Did you make it more comedy? Did you make it more hard-hitting? Did you put more vignettes in? Did you put more backstage stuff in?
More vignettes, more story, more backstage stuff. Because they'd never seen that before on a local level. And I had one guy, you ever see a scene in the background, you say, oh, the cameras, they put the camera there. Of course they did. Mm-hmm. But I put a paparazzi guy. And it was a stupid little handheld camera. And he'd come around the corner and he'd catch two guys talking and they'd look and it would disappear. Because it made sense. They didn't want him taping it. And I called him paparazzi. And he got over with a paparazzi gimmick. He really did. So, and that explained, and it's stupid, I know, but it explained why the camera was there, because he's trying to break the news before everybody else knew it. But it kind of got over because it was a little comical, wasn't really serious, and he got caught at times. He said, "Oh, I just bought this new camera, and I'm just trying it out. We turn that son of a bitch off, okay?" There you go. But he already got the information he needed. So if anybody ever thought about this, said, wait a minute, he caught them doing that on TV. If they're going to all these towns and they're in the same dressing room, what's going on? But if you overthink it, sometimes, you can kill it. So
I've got a big question for you. One of the big criticisms with AEW at the moment is ref bumps and not adhering to the rules, or, not disqualifying when something should be disqualified, quite obviously, and it's happening right in front of the referee's eyes. How did that go in Puerto Rico about disqualifications, count-outs, clean finishes, that kind of thing?
Basically what I did, I just put the baby faces over, except the big shows and where we were taping for TV. If you go to a town, say it's 40 miles out of San Juan, you're up in the mountains. They have some mountains there. You don't want those people leaving like upset or mad because their favorite didn't win, and it didn't matter. I just beat my heel. People leave happy. We leave happy. Nobody's trying to kill us when we leave. Because, when you go in the interior of Puerto Rico 20 years ago, it was not going into the interior of West Virginia 60 years ago. I mean, the same fan mentality. They kind of knew it was not only up and up, but at the same time, they didn't want to see their favorites lose. So you had to, and plus I thought they had bought a ticket, so I want them to go home in a good mood and saying, that was pretty good. Next time they're here, I'm coming back again. That's how you build fans. You don't abuse fans unless it's on something really, really big that you can really spin a story around or interact it with another story. So don't screw your fans. I mean, just for the sake of trying to get heat, because you'll get heat all right, but the wrong kind of heat. That's when they turn the TV off.
Give you two more very brief ones, and we'll move on to the next bit. Is AEW turning into TNA in the sense that they are now hiring quite a lot, or, with Edge, Adam Copeland especially, they're bringing a lot of older WWE guys who've already had their run, and now they're bringing them in their late 40s, because there's 3 points. One, the cost is going to cost the company millions. Two, they're the best thing on the show still. And three, they're still not really positively impacting ratings. And I'll use Christian as an example, because he's doing great stuff in AEW, but it's still
his stuff is good,
but it's still not turning the tide. And also, he's probably costing them a lot of money, but he's still the best thing. You know what I mean? It's that weird dichotomy.
Well, I wish I had an answer for that. If I had an answer for that, I'd pick the phone up and I'd call Tony. Tony, you need to do this. But he's doing the best he can. See, I don't know what his TV syndication is paying him. I heard like $1 billion over 6 years or something. And how many stations does he have? 1 or 2 or 3?
No, he's got 3 channels over 2 stations over the Turner, TBS and TNT.
Well, first of all, I think a lot of things too many. Sometimes it's too much. And he has a lot of too many guys. I don't know if he's paying them while they're sitting home. So if he just paying them just to be on the roster, that's a waste. What are they doing?
I definitely think they're doing that. I think that if they've all got a downside guarantee, if there's a little logo that says so-and-so is all elite, that means that they're beholden to AEW, they'll be getting a downside guarantee, and then they can do indies if AEW says it's okay. Or if they want to.
Well, I don't know. I wish I had an answer for that. Tony Khan does too. So if anybody has an answer to anything for Tony Khan, just write him. Tony Khan at tonykhan.org. That's not his email address. But I think he lives this business. He talks this business. He breathes this business. And they say he works like 18 hours a day. But after a while, that you get burnt out.
That's me.
So now, like Memphis used to be, they would bring these heels in fresh and new. Nobody had ever seen them. And they'd get them hot and they'd leave. They would leave within a period of 9 months. Because if they stayed any longer, now it's rehash. They had their run with Lawler. Now what are they going to do? And Jerry Jarrett used to explain this magnificently. He would say it was like a little kingdom, and they had a king, Lawler, and all of a sudden Jimmy Hart was bringing in all these monsters to destroy him. And all Jimmy Hart had to do to get a guy over is lead him out there. If he was a big, impressive-looking guy, then for the next month, all the other baby faces, me included, we end up having good matches, but he beat us. And he's gearing for Lawler, and Lawler and him would have a run that would last probably 2 months, maybe. And then that would get us like to September. But he'd be gone by October. So it was and then a fresh face. They just do the repeat. Hart would fire him, or something would happen, or Lawler would hurt the guy. And all of a sudden, the kingdom was back to normal. I love the way Jerry Jarrett used to describe this. And everybody was happy to walk the streets and live a normal life till the next fire-breathing dragon came in, and they just rehashed the process, but with a different guy. Made a lot of sense. They drew a lot of money.
Let's move on. Brian Pillman is now we think, Lexis King. He's changed his name. But the thing is, in the vignette that we watched today, it only says that he's changing his surname to King now. Brian Pillman Jr., who was until recently a mainstay of the AEW Witness Protection Program, officially signed with AEW in late August. A couple of brief vignettes of Pillman watching old video of his dad wrestling in some Cincinnati Bengals footage aired. And then this past Tuesday, Pillman's vignette that he was aired that he was denouncing his dead father's name and going by the name something King. But we're assuming Lexis King because that was what was trademarked by WWE recently. The quote is, "When they see this face, I don't want them to think about my dead father. I want them to think about me. I'm nobody's junior, and from this day forward, I'm going to take on the last name of the real man who raised me, the real father figure in my life, and his name was King, and now so is mine." And I was thinking the only thing that would have made this better is if Christian Cage then popped up and said, "Did somebody say dead dad?" Because, man, he loves to point out a dead dad, does old Christian Cage. But, yeah, Brian Pillman.
I love the way they presented him first. Now I have interest in him. See, you're talking about new fans here. So, of course, when you talk about your dad was a wrestler, a lot of these new fans, they won't go on a computer and research Brian Pillman. But I think they will now, because he's laid out a little story. My name is not Pillman, Lexis King, and he needs to get the credit for being my real father. And yeah, if Christian had hopped out, and they may still do that, Who knows? But I think that they expose him in a way. I love those vignettes like that because they're short. It's like a minute. To the point. He tells the story. Now I'm looking. I got a taste of him. I like what I saw. I don't know who came up with that, but it's very good. I used to do it. I used to do that in Puerto Rico all the time. You don't beat him to death right off let him just come in like out of the blue. Now, the smart fans have heard that he's coming, so they're looking for it. So we get a shot of the back of his head and the announcer's talking, unpredictable, psychopath, and you see all those crazy faces that Brian Pillman used to make. And then he came in and added to it. Then it was over. Now I'm interested in how this progresses because they got a story, they got history, they got a lot of. How much video of Brian Pillman could they use on AEW without being in violation?
NXT.
I'm saying no, but Brian Pillman, they showed some clips of him. How much could they use without being in violation of the antitrust laws or whatever?
Oh, you mean NXT could use footage from AEW?
AEW. That's not. I'm saying, yeah, NXT could use some footage of Brian Pillman from, say, yeah.
None. No, that wouldn't happen unless they find something of Brian Pillman from the Indies, which he did work some Indies, but I think he may have been in MLW as well.
They could show still photos, couldn't they?
Yeah. I suspect so, if AEW releases them, but I think they've got their own in-house photographers like WWE has, so they won't give them permission. So I think really WWE is stuck with Brian Pillman Sr. footage. Say stuck with, they've got all the footage on him. But as far as wrestling Brian Pillman Jr., Alexis King, very little out there unless he was on some like random indies that they could maybe borrow off. So basically they'll just have to make their own history, which WWE is very, very good at.
Well, I like the vignette. They did show some still photos of Brian Pillman. They can make that work because he was unpredictable. That is not just a gimmick. That was Brian. Because I used to work with him in WCW, and he was very, very good. And a good football player, too. So I'm looking forward to see how it progresses and how far they'll take it. Because Brian Pillman Jr., you can't call him that anymore. Lexis King. Now, who is this guy? Now, not only have they got me interested in the Lexis King, I'm interested in who his father is. Will his father be a wrestler, or can he wrestle? What is he? So they got me two ways there. I do like that.
Brian Pillman Jr.'s real name is in fact Brian Pillman Jr. as well. Mm-hmm. So a couple more things, right? So Lexis is from his sister Alexis, who for a brief period was a valet called Sexy Lexi Pillman, who died in what was described as a freaky car accident in 2009, but there's not really any more information on that.
Sexy Lexi, did she work for TNA?
She may have been like a ring card girl or something like that. She may have been in there very briefly.
Yeah, I heard that. I've heard the name. And I don't know whether I've ever met her or not.
The other thing I want to make mention of, do you think the fans will react to, I mean, you've seen the vignette, it's quite dark, brooding, bitterness at his father, that kind of, or his biological father, that kind of thing, but do you think the fans will react to him as a good guy or a bad guy?
Oh, I think he's got to be a heel. I think. I mean, because he needs to come in and raise hell. Beat some of he needs to be a disruptor. And if they can I think they can tell a great story with this kid. See, a lot of them, I hope they know how privileged they are to be able to enter NXT with some pros in charge. You're not really working for, writers who don't really know what they want to do with you, they need to be told what to write, how to present this guy as the way they want to present him. I think he's a psychopath too. And I think you'll get a lot of face shots of him. And then is this Mr. King, the fatherly figure, is he coming in right away or will he appear? They can always shoot for that. And we don't know who he is. And that could be a big surprise later on. I think they're going to wait before they show him. I would.
Tell me what you think of this from a booking perspective from me.
I like it.
He's you're an easy audience, is what I like about you. Yeah. He's a bad guy in NXT for however long it is. He's doing the bad people, the bad person thing. But when he eventually turns good guy, that it could be like a wrestling with his own conscience and his own, second generation ness. And then eventually he comes out and does something very good and then realizes who he is and says, I am not Lexus King, I am in fact Brian Pillman Jr. And then the crowd goes, wah! And then you've got almost a brand new character with a great backstory as well to sort of go.
Who owns the name Brian Pillman Jr.?
Well, he does. He is that.
So he can use that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a good jumping off place there. I'd get him over as a heel first. I'd get him over just being a psycho. It doesn't matter if he pins him. I'd have him go there and beat the hell out of the announcers. Spend him. He's a disruptor. He don't give a crap. Or let him go into those stands after a fan that does something to him, and they pull him off. I mean, this guy here is, I think he's he can, I hate the word game changer. How many times you heard that? And how the score stays the same, or it gets less.
Didn't someone do like a tally up of how many times AEW had called someone a game changer, and it was in the 30s?
I bet it's more than that. If they're a game changer. But here's a guy that you could almost, if they make him normal, which I don't think they will, what's the story on him? He was raised by a psychotic dad. Or he comes from a weird family. And people kind of thought he was a baby face, but yet they gravitated to him because he has a chemistry that gathers fans. And if you just watch him, if I'm a fan, I'm thinking, wow, there's something up with this guy. But they never let you in on it. Because I don't think creative was that far advanced in those days. It was Ole Anderson was the booker, and I never knew who the damn other people were. Jody Hamilton worked the GOAT position, but I don't know how many. I don't even know who wrote the TV for WCW.
Oh, it changed. It changed constantly, I think.
Who was the guy who wrote the thing about Jim Ross? Remember him? He was Vince Russo's friend.
Ed Ferrara.
Okay,
next bit of news, and it's not really a bit. Well, it's the news, but we're using this as a jumping off point to tell a story that you were particularly happy about. Tony Schiavone getting the George Tragos Luthez Hall of Fame Gordon Soley Award. Now, Googled Dutch Mantell, Tony Schiavone, and he talked about you actually very recently on his podcast. And there was one thing with you and one thing with your old partner, Bobby Jaggers. Now, you really enjoyed this, didn't you? Did you watch the clip, or did you just read the transcript?
No, I read it, but I did like what he said because he kind of put me over. And I always liked Tony, always, because I was a commentator for something. They called it something. It was me and Tony for about a year. And then when they changed bookers, all of a sudden I got moved over too. I don't know why, because me and Tony were a good team together, because I would add the bullshit and he would add the information, which is what I think a good commentating team does. I don't see WWE doesn't have the color guy like they used to have. They don't have a Jerry Lawler. They don't have a Bobby Heenan. They don't have a Jesse Ventura. And it's all straight guys. They're just straight commentators. And they don't really add that much to the story. Michael Cole talks incessantly. Just on and on and on. And I want one of the color guys, I don't know what they call them now, to say something a bit on the heel side and let Michael disagree with it. But it's not a bad thing. Their ratings are good, but it's kind of tough listening to those announcers. But they're doing it, so they're doing great. So who am I to say anything about their announcers? It's working.
Now, shall I read out this transcript here about what Tony Schiavone said about you and your old friend Bobby?
Bobby Jaggers, oh yeah.
So, Tony says, one of the guys backstage, he was one of the best, one of the funniest, really. Everybody liked Dutch. There was nothing spectacular about Dutch, but he was a really good heel and even a good babyface. My time with Dutch mostly was when he was part of the Kansas Jayhawks with Bobby Jaggers, and Jaggers was... I'll cut out the swearing. People like it when we cast it. So effing stupid. The most famous trip...
And he meant that in the kindest possible way. He liked Bobby.
The most famous trip I took with Dutch was we were out in Los Angeles, right? And it was me and Jaggers and Dutch and Tommy Young, the referee, in fact, in the car together. I had a rental car, and that's back when I was doing house shows. So I probably have told the story before, but so we decided we had the whole day. We decided we were going to drive around LA and take a look at the sights. Bobby Jaggers was known to stretch the truth, or as Dutch would call him, a lying MFer. All right.
Again, in the kindest possible way. And Bobby would hear me say this, and he'd laugh too. So, and he never got mad at me. That's one thing about it.
And we would go to a place and Bobby would say, I've been there before. This is where so-and-so happened, or this is where so-and-so happened. Bobby would come up with one of these places where you knew he was BSing you about it. Dutch would say something like, well, I guess you're Mr. effing Hollywood then, aren't you? Or Bobby would say, take a right here. I said, I never forgotten it popped us. Dutch said, well, where are we going to now, Mr. effing Rand McNally? He would just pop us all the time. The way he would just BS or hammer Bobby Jaggers, and Jaggers would just take it, and Bobby smoked the whole time in the car and the windows down in the back. And it was a memorable trip. It's where I got to know Dutch.
Yeah, that was a good trip. Tony, I've always liked Tony because he always squared up with me. He'd tell me the truth. And he loved my humor. So we made a trip. He laughed the whole way. So I'm saying that's what made the trip short. If you enjoy the trip, you forget about the length of it. And that's who you needed to travel with. Somebody could make you laugh, somebody that was entertaining, somebody that was a good talker. That's why the trips were long, but some trips were basically short. So, and Bobby, he's passed on now. Great guy. Sometimes what makes you feel better about yourself is after Bobby died, his daughter wrote me an email, and she said who she was. I forgot her name now. And she says, I just want, my dad's passed on, but I always wanted to know that my dad loved you. And he would come home and he would talk about you. And every time he talked about you, he started laughing. She said, entertaining stories, but I just wanted you to know before that my dad thought the world of you, which meant a lot to me, really. And I wrote her back and, offered my condolences. And Bobby was the type, he was entertaining. You couldn't believe a word he said, but he was entertaining as the son of a gun. He said one time, this is a Tully Blanchard story. See, Bobby he was like kind of a chubby type guy, and he said he could ski. And Tully Blanchard said, bullshit. You can't ski. Don't hand me that shit. I don't believe you. So they went to a lake in North Carolina one day. Somehow both of them ended up at the lake. And Tully challenged him. He says, can you ski? He said, yeah, I can ski. He said, shit, prove it. And Tully's telling this story. He said, we got him back there. He acted like he never seen a pair of skis in his life. And we set him out there, and all of a sudden the boat started. And he says, I'll be damned. He said that SOB could ski. He said he could go this way and turn, he'd go back, and the one-hand stuff. He said the one thing I thought he couldn't do, he was pretty damn good at. So he had to go to the point to where he had to prove it, and he did. So, Bobby, miss you, buddy. I really do. So, good guy. Good guy.
Do you think we could get Tony on one day?
Oh, I might. Let me give him he'd be a good guest.
I'd like to have him on. Definitely.
You know how to get a hold of him? I think I got his number.
I might do as well.
Let's put it up, and everybody call him.
Yeah, put his number up, and put his number up, and all send him the same thing.
Tell him I want him on the show, and see if you can get a hold of him.
Now, Ric Flair, your old pal.
Oh my God! Oh, my old buddy.
Here's the quotes from Chris Van Vliet's show. Ric Flair said, "I want."
Now, who is that? Who is that guy?
Oh, he interviews wrestlers, a new one every week, sort of like I do. He was doing it a lot longer than I have.
How many followers does he have?
Let's not talk about how many followers. A couple more than us. That's all that needs to be said.
Well, I'll go on the show and I'll advertise us. Yeah.
Oh yeah, actually, yeah. No, he's got loads more. You should go on the show. They offer your services.
I will.
And
I'm gonna tell him Ric Flair's a damn liar, but everybody knows that. Hey, Ric Flair and Bobby Jaggers, I swear. But Bobby's stories didn't glorify him, but they were such outlandish stories. And if it was true, it'd be great. And I'd look at him, I said, you're not capable of the truth, Bobby. Oh, yeah, I am. Yeah, I am. He's smoking down the road. Oh, he's too much. But a good guy.
I want to wrestle again right now. So as Ric Flair says. Sorry, do a slightly dramatic retelling.
Yeah. Go ahead. Do it. Hey, that was pretty funny. What happened? There we go.
Isn't it crazy? I feel like and now he mentions a name. The original person he wanted to wrestle, Ricky Morton. Yep. The guy that I should have chosen for my last match would have been great, Flair said. Ricky Morton is still wrestling. You know what the best thing for me about it is I forced myself to really get in shape. I've heard this from guys over the years. When they were older, I was in my prime. The older guys would say, man, I'm tired of working out. There gets a time when you just get bored working out. You don't have a goal. I mean, they gave me a goal and I just attacked it. I didn't stop drinking or anything, but I was literally training 3 hours a day, 5 days a week in the ring. Or I was doing the sled and the ropes. Yeah, I got my bench press up for 2 1/4. I mean, so from being dead to all that was pretty cool. Now, he talks more about the last match. I can give you more quotes. But Ric Flair, he said that 1, he wants to wrestle again, and 2, he wishes that he'd actually wrestled Ricky Morton instead of the other 3 guys.
Oh, God. See, I predicted this. I said the last match should be a big deal. But the last match against who did he wrestle? The tag team?
Yeah, it was Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal.
Jay Lethal. And it should mean something. It did mean something. Flair damn near died. They all thought he was dying in the ring. And he said he made it up. Said he made it up because they wanted to do all kind of things to him. No, Rick, you would have objected to that when they brought it up. He said they're going to suplex him outside. No, they're going to come off the top on him and drop the elbow. No. I think watching the match, hell, I thought he was going to die. So, and that was claimed, deemed his last match ever till the next person who wants to put up the money. Let's go do a pay-per-view. And he probably would have had a better match with Ric Flair with
Morton.
Ricky Morton, I'm sorry. But that would make Flair, he'd have to be a heel and he'd have to win, which is, I don't know. How would you feel if you wrestled a 73 or 74-year-old man his last match and he beat you? What the hell? But you have the. I'd like to see the finish they would come up with for that.
Well,
but
maybe he might he might want to put over that young and upcoming whippersnapper Ricky Morton, though.
He may have to put over him.
Yeah.
Oh, he wouldn't care. He wouldn't give a crap. What he cares about is getting the money, what they're going to pay him. I don't blame him. But I can't imagine they would have a good match now at all. Flair, Ricky is still wrestling, but he's told me, he said he can't do it no more. He said it's when you reach a certain age, wrestlers, they can't do it. They just cannot do it. They cannot move like they used to. They can't bump like if the bumps hurt. You can't do it anymore. So, and somebody wrote me an email. They said, "Don't you think 50 is too old to wrestle?" And I says, "Not yeah, but hell yeah." But again, look at Christian. And how old is Christian? 50?
Nearly that, yeah. He's probably 48, 49.
And Edge is about the same thing?
Yeah, I think Edge is 49, 50.
Okay. They're on their last year or two active in the ring. So, but the guy asked me, said, should the age 50 be a stopping point for wrestlers having a match? Well, I'm not going to tell them what to do because you live in a free country. But the fans will tell you when they're done with you. I mean, if you go to the ring and like the old Edge of before, he's not getting that reaction. Christian is not actually, Christian is doing his best work I've seen him do.
But it's story. It's not wrestling. I mean, it's wrestling, right. But yeah, it's story.
Okay, and that validates my opinion of wrestling. Tell the story till you have a chance to advance the story with a match. So the story always makes the match anyway. Dusty Rhodes used to appear but on TV, but he never had a match on TV that I remember, other than it was a special deal. But in a studio setting, you never saw Dusty get in the ring. You never really saw Hulk Hogan get in the ring unless it's a special deal, because you had to actually come out to the arena and buy a ticket to see him step into the ring, which is the way it should be. I mean, WWE before, they were just ramming guys down the fans' throat. And I did my other podcast where I dissect SmackDown. You could almost predict who was going to be in the next match. And it was nothing special. It was just a match. You talk about boring. It was more than boring. What I think sometimes their ratings were 1.5 million people, 1.3 million. I think the people watching the show, they went to sleep and they didn't change their channel. That's the only thing that helped them. They had some great matches, but they're too long. Now WWE is back to the WWE. They were back during the Attitude Era. They're just not as gross, but the matches really mean something, and they're shorter with a lot packed into them. I think that's a winning formula.
I want to give you quite a few things here. So, one, Paul Heyman was very famous in saying that he wanted to cut the heads off of anybody over 35 and just have one legend in whatever promotion he was in. ECW, that legend was Terry Funk, and then everybody else was young guys. Another example I'll get, this is just like for different thoughts on the matter. Vince McMahon, when Hulk Hogan was still the biggest thing in the world in 1992, or in fact, let's say 92, and then he goes off and retires. That was partly because Vince thought that Hulk Hogan was washed up at 38.
Mm-hmm.
There's another different change in mentality, whereas in Mexico, they still shove people in their 60s and 70s in the ring for, Legends matches for big shows, Triple Mania or something like that. But then the fans are cheering for the personalities and they're not expecting the world as far as in ring. And similarly, Japan does that sometimes as well. They have some guys on, that still wrestle well into their 60s. I think it's one of those things that it just depends on what your promotion is, what you're trying to promote, and the person. Because Sting, he still looks great and he moves great for 64 or so. He's an outlier.
Well, he is, but he's not. He's an outlier that he can still have a match. But I don't know if you could do a story with him. You might do it with his little cohort buddy. What's his name?
Darby Allin.
Might do it with him. But basically, he's just a throwback. Tony was a big fan of Sting, I'm sure, and would like to have him there. He's got him there, and he almost killed himself when he jumped off that ladder and trying to do the elbow on the guy on the table. He missed it all except his knee and his face. He's damn lucky he could get up and walk away from that. And I'm thinking, what makes a 65-year-old man want to drop an elbow off a ladder till a guy 15 feet below? If they'd have asked me to do that, I just laughed in their face. I said, you're kidding. But they got to be careful about people they ask to do this. Some guys might do it and then claim the injury and milk about $300,000 out of Tony. Now, you got to watch that.
Before we get off Ric Flair entirely, let me give you a bit more of the quotes because you actually picked up on what he said partially. Yep. I'll give you the whole thing. When the last match started to go wrong, Ric Flair said everything went great, including the 9,000 people we packed in there, which is more than WCW or WWE had.
It won't hold 9,000 people.
Oh, did you look up that?
I don't think it'll hold that.
That was wrestler's exaggeration then, probably. And then I just walked up the ramp and I just felt the combination of emotions. See, it's funny, he says combination of emotions and being nervous and everything starting out fine. He forgets to mention the combination of alcohol in his body as well, which drained him out, which he's admitted to. Then he continues, well, they all went with it. I don't know who they all are, but they all thought I was telling them like my heart or something like that. And that's the worst thing I did. And then I got real lightheaded. And I know that I was in and out all during the match. So I was
Keep reading.
I was fighting like hell to get through it, but it was just fighting here. Nothing that I felt I wasn't hurting anywhere. I just felt bad because the guys had been all panicking and worried about my health. We had said we had constructed such a great match. If it had come off the way we'd practiced forever, it would have been a masterpiece. But when I walked back to the locker room, The Undertaker made me drink 3 Gatorades and I went to Kid Rock and drank all night long. Now, the last bit's the most important bit. The stuff that got taken out of that match. Oh, God, they were just going to slam me off the top, suplex me, stuff on the floor. Everybody's just panicking. It was all a concern for me. They didn't forget their parts. This is the other 3 people in the tag team. They just went, let's get through this. That's why I had to fake a heart attack. I went, slow down, I'm okay. Should have never said anything. So then we got a little bit more back in, but my son-in-law, Andrade, had to put the brass knucks on my hand. He's going, wake up, sir. That was it. So apparently he felt so bad, he felt he needed to fake a heart attack.
Yeah. See, that don't even make sense at all. I mean, Ric Flair, when he opens his mouth, just assume that whatever's going to come out is a lie, basically. He makes stuff up on the spur of the moment. Now, he can talk about this same match tomorrow and probably not say the same thing. He'll change it to something else.
Yeah, I've never heard the heart attack one before. I had to fake it because I was feeling a bit bad, and that was my way of telling the other 3 guys in the match to do whatever, work around me.
Well, he faked a heart attack, and he couldn't have told them anything because he couldn't breathe. That's why I said I thought he was dying. And what's that old saying? Never meet your heroes because they'll disappoint you. That's a case. He talks later on. Are you going to read later on about Puerto Rico?
Oh God, yeah. Oh God, no. But this is Hulk Hogan. We've got a couple of Hulk Hogan bits that you want to make mention of as well. But just before we do, that is our main event, as it were. You watched the Von Erichs film trailer. What do you think of it?
I did. I liked it.
Yeah.
Yes, what I saw would make me want to see the movie. I really do. And these guys look pretty good. They kind of resemble the characters they're portraying. Who plays Kerry?
Kevin is Zac Efron.
Yeah, well.
But I don't know who plays Kerry. One sec.
Well,
so a quick search on IMDb. He's called Jeremy Allen White, and he was in the American version of Shameless as Lip Gallagher.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
What does Efron play?
Kevin Von Erich.
Okay.
In fact, I'll tell you, the only people that I really recognise in the cast are Zac Efron, who is the star, of course, Kevin Von Erich of the famous Von Erich clan, and Lily James as the woman he loved. And then Maura Tierney, who is best known as Abby Lockhart in ER, and Jim Carrey's ex-wife in Liar Liar. But I don't really recognise anyone else in the cast apart from MJF, who of all people play the fake Von Erich, Lance Von Erich. That's an amazing bit of casting.
Yeah. But I think the show is going to do well. The movie. It's a movie, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think it will do well. And talking about movies, we're still involved in the Bruiser Brody, putting the Bruiser Brody movie together.
Mm-hmm. Bruiser, so someone is portraying Bruiser in this film, in fact.
Oh, is there? Well, wrestling fans will like this. And I think, are they taking this to the movie houses, or is this going out streaming, or what?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't think it'll be ready until next year anyway. I mean, it says, December 22nd.
Yeah.
It's coming out for. I think it's going to be a cinema release.
Well, it's going to be, I think it's going to be, from what I've seen so far, I kind of like it. I know the story, and I've been around the Von Erichs, been in matches with them. I need to see it send you a match with it's a 6-man tag.
See, Houston, got it.
You got it?
Yeah.
And they were stiff as hell. But they didn't hurt me, so.
Do you know who's playing Michael Hayes?
Michael Hayes is playing himself, or no?
No. Do you know who's playing him?
Who?
Dog the Bounty Hunter. He's not. I'm making that up, but he should be.
He's not in the movie, right? The Bounty Hunter.
No, I've just made that up.
Oh.
But someone is playing Michael P.S. Hayes, but it's not Dwayne Dog Chapman. It should be the part he was born to play, but apparently not.
Well, he's too old now, but that Dog Chapman, I used to watch his show. Interesting show.
Yeah.
It really, really was, but he wasn't the star of it. His wife was.
She took up the most screen.
Yeah, she was more entertaining than the Bounty Hunter was. But I think the movie would do well.
I'll give you a couple of thoughts. What do you think of Zac Efron's running of the ropes at the beginning? I thought it was all right.
That is, if he can run the ropes, that was like a Texas thing. They used to have a guy called the Spoiler, and he was about 6'5", 6'6". And he wouldn't run the ropes, but he'd walk the ropes, which is very unusual to see a guy that big on those ropes. That's where the Undertaker got it. He used to walk the ropes. And I remember the first time I was working with Mark. He was an Undertaker then. And it's some town in Tennessee. And he says, I want to walk the ropes. He told me, hold my hand. So we do a Grecian handlock while he walked down the ropes. I'd hold him. Well, he didn't test the top rope. Oh, my God. He got in the middle of it, and the rope broke. And down, it's cable. It didn't break there, but it broke in the corner. Like it pulled the hook out, or the hook broke. Oh, my God. He went down. And I've had funny things happen in the ring. But I just laughed out loud. I couldn't help it. I had to go down on the mat and cover my face because I was laughing so hard. And he was so embarrassed. And it didn't hurt him. he got back in the ring and just beat the crap out of me like it was my fault. And I was laughing, and he's punching me, and I'm laughing. Quit laughing. But I'm glad he didn't get hurt. But he stole that from the spoiler, Don Jardine, which was and he should have had a better career than what he had. But business was different then. He made a lot of money in Texas, so.
Something else I want to bring up is, very briefly, Fritz says he basically ranks the kids in order of how much he loves them.
Yeah.
Is that actually what Fritz did? Did you ever hear that?
Well, I never heard that, but there was a lot of jealousy in that family, and because I think Fritz was an expecting father and an exacting father. And they were like, the top three were always like in competition. So, but I don't know Fritz that well. I met him a couple of times, never really sat down, never had a meal with him, never had a drink with him or anything. But they say they said that was a really dysfunctional family. And it was.
The film also, so when I think of the Von Erichs, I suspect you and pretty much everybody, you think basically tragedy of the Von Erich family. I know you can't have a film of 2 hours of Von Erichs killing themselves, or, but I mean, that's what people think of when they think of the Von Erichs. But the trailer, apart from one brief funeral scene, which isn't really explained too much, it almost comes off as more like a love story with wrestling as the backdrop. Is that how you're seeing it?
Well, I can't tell in what I've seen so far. I saw his wife with that Southern accent. So, but it doesn't mean to be a depressing story.
No, it looks upbeat, doesn't it?
It looks like it's with the girl in, who was that, Carrie? That was Carrie's wife?
She's played by Lily James.
And she was Carrie's wife, right?
Carrie. Yeah.
Carrie.
Yeah. Or Kevin's. I think Kevin's.
You know who the real star was expected to be by Fritz was David. Then he went to Japan and found him dead. And now I think that was before Kerry went to WWE. Of course, he had an accident before. People that know the story know the story. I know the story, but I don't know the story. And he crushed his foot so bad, he had to have an artificial foot attached to his ankle. And I think Kerry died next.
No.
Am I right?
No. In order, dare I do this off the top of my head? There was the youngest son, Jack Jr., who died as a kid. Then there was David, who died in 1984, maybe. I think it was an overdose.
In Japan.
Yep. And then maybe Mike, who got toxic shock syndrome, and then he ended up killing himself. And then there was Chris Von Erich, the tiny little one, who didn't develop properly, had like developmental issues and health issues. Mm-hmm. And he killed himself. And then Kerry killed himself in 1993 because he looked like he was about to be indicted on drug charges or pill shopping or something like that. But yeah, he looked like he was going down the curve.
And what was the last brother's name?
And the surviving brother is Kevin.
And then Fritz died.
Fritz died like 97 or 8 or something like that.
It's a story. And I watched an interview with Kerry, with
Kevin.
Wow, he said he was so depressed. And I may have told this story before.
Yeah.
He wanted to kill himself. So one day he walks into a gun shop and everybody knew him. They all said, "Hey, Kevin, how you doing?" Because he'd been on TV so much. And he bought a gun, I think, and he walked out, or he took a gun just off the shelf and walked out. Didn't pay for it. He went and got in his car. Nobody called the cops. Nobody did anything. And then he says, well, and then he took the gun back in and gave it back to him. They didn't even call the cops on him. So he wanted to sit outside in the parking lot, from what I understand, and kill himself out there because he was so depressed over his whole family. And I could see that. When did the mother die? Does it say?
No, I didn't look up that.
It was total tragedy in Texas.
Just before we move on to the main event, the Hulk Hogan thing, the Puerto Rico story, which I know you were very beguiled by, his version or retelling or making up or whatever. Apparently, and I've looked this up, that if one person commits suicide in a family, it raises the chances of somebody else doing it in the same family because of, I don't know if it's cause and effect, or they just think, well, they took that way out, so it's available to me, that kind of thing. But it may well sort of explain, because obviously the Von Erichs, the Graham family as well, where it's several generations with. So it's one of those things where it's sort of like, if one person does it in a family, it almost psychologically prepares you to think that maybe you could do it too. I don't know what the thing. I don't know what the.
I've never heard that. I've never heard that theory, but there was something that I can't pinpoint, nor can psychologists or anybody else. They can say something, but who knows what was going on in the heads of the Von Erichs. I can't say, you can't say, and I knew them. I didn't know them well, but they were always like a little bit odd, always. So the matches I had with them sometimes in Texas, I wasn't there long, but they were friendly, they were nice, but distant. I mean, you wouldn't want to walk in and feel like you're at home with these guys, because they were basically all loners, all of them. I didn't know if they had, other than the girl they show in the movie. I guess that's Carrie's wife, I guess. They got close, but I never knew them to have close friends, and nobody ever said anything about them having friends and doing this, or even talking to people that knew them. They would tell you that it was a little bit weird with that group.
Now, you posted a few days ago a little video from Joe Rogan's podcast featuring Hulk Hogan. And he was telling a little story about him going to Puerto Rico for the first time. Would you like me to read out the transcript for you?
So we can't show that.
No, I don't think so.
Read the transcript out. Okay, fans, listen. He's going to read it out, and just imagine Hulk sitting there with his bandana on, his little trimmed mustache, and he's talking.
Well, let me tell you, brother. First time we go down to Puerto Rico. I've never been to Puerto Rico before. All the boys tell me how violent it is. They cut you, they burn you with cigarettes, they throw everything at you in Puerto Rico, so I'd never been. I didn't need to go, but now Vince McMahon wants to go down to Puerto Rico. And Carlos Colon had the territory there for like 30, 40 years, so here we come, and I go rolling down to Puerto Rico with Cyndi Lauper with me, right? So I go down to Puerto Rico, and we have the match, and we saw the stadium. Me and Macho Man get back to the room, and we go walk in his room, and his room is trashed. His room is trashed, and so all of a sudden I go, oh my God, I'm going to go to my room. So all of a sudden I go to my room, and I don't want to say the guy's name, but when I open the door, he's sitting there. And because he's still really active, and he's sitting there with a gun, he said, if you ever come back here again, Puerto Rico, I'm assuming, maybe not his hotel room, I'm going to kill you. Okay, I was going back to Tampa. I hauled ass to the airport. I got on an Eastern Airlines flight, the last one out of town. I flew to LA. I was supposed to be going home to Tampa. About 4 months later, Bruiser Brody goes down there, has a little argument. The booker calls him into the shower, cuts his throat and kills him. Christ, I don't know if you guys ever heard the Brody story. The promoter cut his throat. Well, he was the booker. He was one of the invaders, Rodriguez. And Brody was kind of hard to do business with in the ring. He's really stiff and would beat the shit out of you. He wouldn't put anybody over, and he was a big man, 6'8", 330 pounds, in crazy shape. And you know, they wanted to beat him. He was not tonight. He was not tonight, brother. Wow. So after the match, they said, "Hey, Jose wants to talk to you in the shower." Brody went walking in the shower. He jumped and cut his throat and died right there. And all the wrestlers that saw it were afraid to go back and testify. Okay, what should we talk about there first?
Well, he'd never been to Puerto Rico. They got to be a first time for everything. Mm. He said he had a match with Macho Man. Was that what he? And they sold it out.
No, he said he went back to the hotel with Macho Man. He actually wrestled that night at Big John Studd.
And he said they sold out. They didn't sell out. No. I don't. He said he had 2,500 people there. But
this is an outdoor stadium. And
yeah, they got 18 to 20,000 seat stadiums. They have some big stadiums. And he says he went back to his room, and he went to Savage's room first. And it was trash. Mm-hmm. First of all, who trashed the room? I mean, if somebody's wanting to kill you and wanting to make a point, they're going to trash your room. Just call housekeeping, tell them to come up and straighten it up again. Because I'm sure they were in a nice hotel. Then he went down to his room, and he walked in, and there was a guy in there with a gun, put it in his face. Mm-hmm. And he says, "If you ever come back, I'll kill you." Mm-hmm. Well, he never says the guy. And I can't imagine who the guy is. I don't know. And then it scared him so bad, he went to the airport and took the last flight out to Los Angeles, I guess, which is possible, I guess, because I used to live in an apartment close to the airport. It has flights at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning leaving, going to the West Coast. So that is possible. That's the only true thing he might have mentioned.
I think he flew out.
Yeah, it flew out it has to be the last flight out. And he was going to Tampa, but they didn't have a flight to Tampa that late. So he took the last flight they had, Los Angeles, and just flew there for no reason, I guess. Why did he fly? He never says why he flew to L.A.
Just to escape the man with the golden gun in his hotel room.
I guess. And then he mentions Carlos Colon owning the territory 30, 40 years. No, the territory was only it was a young territory then. It was like 12 years.
Exactly.
It'd been in business. And he gets it all wrong. What else does he say down there? He flies out. And then a couple of months later, that's when Bruiser Brody came in. And they wanted him to do something. He said, "No, not tonight, brother." I don't think he'd say that. But Brody was difficult to do business with. And I don't blame him. If you come in just to put a guy over, where's your next match going to be with? You going to do something with me? We going to continue this or what? And the reason those big Japan guys came to Puerto Rico, Abdullah, he owned a part of it. So did Gorilla Monsoon. They paid him well. They had to pay him well or they wouldn't go. And the reason Brody wouldn't put anybody over, because that would be recorded and they could send that to Japan and anybody could play that video. That they had competing companies in Japan, and the company that was number 2, they could get that tape of Brody getting beat. Well, they'd show it. That's why he didn't want his matches taped, and he didn't want to put anybody over. They knew that when they brought him in. He knew that. There was no, I've seen Carlos, he might have won the match, but on a fluke, and he owned the company. And then Brody would come back and just beat the crap out of him and leave him laying. So that part is true, because Brody didn't put nobody over. They knew that before they booked him. Then he says he had this match, and as soon as he had the match, he didn't give the finish. He walked back. They say, "Hey, Jose wants to see you in the shower." That's not the way it happened. This happened when the Brody got attacked or stabbed in the shower in Puerto Rico. The show hadn't even started. I was outside in the dugout watching the people come in because I had a bad feeling something was going on. Something wasn't right in that dressing room that night because I felt it. And I've always been the one to feel animosity or trouble before it happened. And I remember I was sitting beside Brody in the back. I've never had a feeling like that before. I anticipated something, but I didn't know what. Now the people say, well, Dutch is just making shit. No, I didn't. I couldn't even sit in the dressing room anymore. And I didn't say a word to anybody. I just went out to the dugout. And when all this happened, I was in the dugout. Then I got back, and there's Brody laying on the floor. And his throat was not cut. He was stabbed once here that I remember, in the chest and once in the gut. And some of his hair was cut off because he tried to cut him on the back. And then the story goes from there. Brody died. And then about all the people were afraid to go back and testify. No. I've said before, my subpoena for the trial came in the day after they held it. Because I looked at the date on the letter, and it was mailed 10 days before the trial, but the mail was so slow, it had just got to me where I was. So when they had the trial, I already knew the verdict because it had already hit the websites. So, and I wasn't afraid to go back and testify, but I couldn't testify to anything. I didn't see anything. I just know that Invader took a knife in that shower, and they had only two men know what happened in that shower. One of them's not talking, and one of them is dead. So make it what you will. But I do believe I thought about this a long time. I've actually thought about this over 30 years since it's happened. I do believe that Invader fully intended to cause more damage than what it seemed like at first. I think he fully intended to take him out. I think I don't want to go as far as that I think he wanted to kill him, but that's what he did. And there's some extenuating circumstances under that too, because he had a 3-year-old daughter who had just died 3 months earlier, and Brody didn't like him. He didn't like Brody. Brody got him fired from the original New York WWF. Got him fired from there because Brody had a match with him. Didn't sell nothing, just beat the shit out of him. And he thought Brody was going to buy in to the Puerto Rican territory and fire him there. So what he was fighting was a guy with the power to fire him, or possibly a power to fire him, and was coming in and going to buy the territory. So has some extenuating circumstances. They had the trial about, I guess, 9 months later. They scheduled it for like 7 months later, and it was postponed, I think. I'm not sure on that. And but if you look at the trial, here you got on TV, people watching TV, and they see the Invader. Well, they only remember the Invader underneath the mask and what a big star he was, because he was a big star. And then they saw Brody, who had been portrayed on TV as a psychopath. And these were the jurors that are going to judge you. And this psychopathic American, Brody, come in, and all Invader was doing was defending himself. So basically, Brody became a victim of the judicial system by proxy, because the people looked at Brody, and they'd always show Brody in these crazy scenes. He's out in the crowd. He's beating up Abdullah. He's bleeding all over the place. So after watching this for about 4 years or 5 years maybe, they really believed that Brody was crazy. So you're going to take a crazy man attacking almost a hero in Puerto Rico, because he was somewhat of an hero, somewhat of an idiot too. But I heard the Invader speak Spanish and English on interviews. I don't know what kind of Spanish he was thinking, but he was talking, but it was always with an accent. I associated with an Alabama accent in New York City. You could tell where he was from just by his accent. So, and he was found not guilty. And somebody wrote me, said they need to reopen the case. They can't reopen the case. Case is closed, period. Mm-hmm. And I did try to get some information about the trial about a year after the trial happened. It all disappeared. Nobody knows where it went, and nobody can find it. So the mystery is, did he intend to kill him when he took him in the shower and asked him a question? I do believe that you don't ask a man to go into and speak with you and then arm yourself with a knife. So what's the truth? I don't know the truth. I just have opinion. So that's the story.
A couple of things I want to pick up on you just very briefly. You mentioned you heard the news through websites, but there were no websites then. So I imagine someone called you with the trial verdict, or do you remember how you heard?
I'm trying to think how I did hear. I do remember that I'm in Birmingham, Alabama. It probably was a phone call. And I can't remember who called me. But, and I think maybe it was a Tuesday. They had that trial on, it was only like an hour trial. Very, very short. So, and he was, but anyway, I probably did hear it by telephone. I think. I don't know. I can't, but I got my letter the next day. I'm saying it was a Tuesday, and I looked at the date it was sent. It was sent 10 days earlier because the mail was notoriously slow in Puerto Rico.
So there's one more thing you said. Only 2 people knew, and one of them's not talking, and the other one has died. But there was apparently, according to Hulk Hogan, 3 people, because there was Jose Gonzalez, Bruiser Brody, and the mysterious man called Rodriguez, which sort of takes us to Hogan's...
Wait a minute, Rodriguez?
Yes. He got Jose Gonzalez's name wrong. So he went, yeah, old Rodriguez took...
Yeah.
Anyway, so let me go through the things that Hulk Hogan gets wrong.
Mm-hmm.
WWC, the World Wrestling
Council.
Tell
you if it's wrong or not? Or are you going to say it?
Well, I'll say something, you confirm it for me then. WWC was founded in 1973, not 30 or 40 years ago. So we're talking 1985. It was founded in 73, so that's 12 years ago. Cyndi Lauper was not at the show. Or if she was, she certainly wasn't accompanying Hulk Hogan. Why Cyndi Lauper would be there anyway, I have no idea. Now, so this happened. This match happened. This event happened in Hulk Hogan's mind, October 19th, 1985. He says 4 months later, Brody has an argument with so and so. No. 2.5 years later, the booker, quote unquote, Rodriguez, is actually Jose Gonzalez, and as you said, cuts his throat, which he didn't. Shoulder, gut, and hair cutting as well, as you mentioned. Also, it needs to be mentioned that Brody didn't die right there. He was alive for quite a few hours afterwards. He died in the hospital. And he also said all the wrestlers were afraid to testify. Well, we know for a fact that's not true because our guest we had a couple of months ago, Savio Vega, actually testified. And he gave us a first-hand account of how it was just a total kangaroo court, and he knew he wasn't going to be listened to or taken seriously, and they'd already made up their mind before they even got anyone on the stand. Now, Hogan did actually go to Puerto Rico and wrestle Big John Studd on the date I gave. Obviously, the main event, that was the main event, but in Puerto Rico, the main event doesn't go on last. It goes on somewhere in the middle of the card, essentially. So, for various reasons, including the health of the performers, I suggest. And you've definitely said this was in Hiram Bithorn Stadium. Bithorn, excuse me.
I never found out who that guy was. I think a baseball player or something.
I'll Google that in a minute. So he got hit with a rainstorm in the middle of the Hulk Hogan John Studd main event, and then the following matches: the Killer Bees versus Mike Sharp and Barrio, Tito Santana versus Randy Savage, and Pedro Morales versus the Spoiler, who we mentioned earlier, in fact. They all became sort of comedy knockabout, sort of hilarious matches where they just kept falling over every 4 seconds because there was a rainstorm happening and the ring got wet. The ring only like 2 feet above ground level as well. It's a really odd ring they had. Gorilla Monsoon was calling the matches under a plastic sheet because he was at ringside. And there was... Okay, let me give you the explanation as to why the WWF didn't go back to Puerto Rico rather than a mysterious man with a gun pointing at Hulk Hogan's head. The weather was terrible, and it was a crappy show with only reportedly 1,200 people. I think maybe some more, but not that many more. But they didn't sell many tickets. It's far away, and the World Wrestling Council was already there as the incumbent promotion, and surely that's got to be the more likely explanation.
You're saying you're trying to explain why they didn't draw any money?
I'm trying to explain why they didn't go back. It's because they drew a shitty house, and the rain washed them out, and they probably just never wanted to go back anyway.
Well, so you've already talked about the guy in the room, right? That pointed the gun at Hogan, which was never happened. I never heard a word about that.
Well, that's the big thing. Did you never hear? Right, so no one's ever said...
I never heard these things. Yeah. I never heard this stuff. So I'm saying Hogan is getting up there talking out of school on things that didn't happen. And I'm not calling him out for what he says. I'm talking about this stuff never happened. Not that it would change anything. But Hogan is such a narcissistic, has such a narcissistic attitude. It's all about him. It's all about him. Instead of what actually happened to Brody, it all comes back to, it always comes back to Hogan. Did he have any sympathy for what happened? Did he think they were going to kill him? You know, if I thought somebody was going to kill me, I wouldn't have never went in the first place. So nobody to blame but himself. And none of that stuff happened. So if you're going to tell a story, tell it at least where it's somewhat believable. Now, I was there and I didn't go back and research the show that he was on whenever it was, but I don't remember WWE coming there when I was there. Then I heard later they came and didn't draw a house. Mm-hmm. So, and you said they put Hogan in the middle of the card?
Yeah, but essentially the main event.
Yeah, well, that's basically what they do in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Because when I was there, me and my partner, we had a lot of heat because they literally hated us. So we would go on fourth. And I asked Carlos one day, I says, I thought it was the stupidest thing in the world. I said, why do you put your main event on fourth? He said, well, you're going to find out. I said, what do you mean? He said, if we put you on, wait to the last to put you on, every Puerto Rican in that stadium, they're drunk. And you're going to have a lot of trouble if we do a screwy finish with you. You can get beat and leave, but don't try to screw any of the Puerto Ricans and leave because they're drunk. And they are really, really hammered. I mean, not all of them, but
just the kids.
And they, oh yeah, just a 5 or 6 year old kids. But and I've seen them. I mean, just come out of the stands and encircle the infield. And I saw them throwing stuff at Abdullah one night. It looked like a biblical stone killing. What they call that?
Stone head, yeah.
Well, yeah, it was bouncing off his head and his back. Come back, his back was cut. His head was cut from that rock. But I'll say one thing about Abdullah, he didn't run from them. He just kept his head low and kept going. And it was very, very dangerous to work down there because they didn't really provide you that much security. Because security, they wasn't paying them nothing. They're not going to take an ass kicking to protect you. They'll stay with you for a while and get you back. But hey, I've had them throw things at me from the other side of the stadium. I would sit in the dugout and I could see it coming, and it would be a rock. And kids would stand outside the stadiums with a box of rocks, and they sell them for a nickel a piece. Mm-hmm. So if you went in, you spent 50 cents, you got some weaponry now. You could throw that. And that's, I used to wear a poncho and a hat I wore that for a reason. I would put my hat down low and turn my head this way toward the crowd. So anything they threw would bounce off the helmet, some of it. Then I let the poncho drop down, and then that picked up a lot of it. If I hadn't had that, hell, I may have been knocked out. They have thrown everything at me. They've thrown shattered glass, big rocks, baseball-sized rocks, Coke bottles, beers, full beers. Brother, it was dangerous down there. And of course, what is the security doing when they're taking you back? They're just trying to block the stuff that's coming to you, but some of it gets through. So remember, we had a riot at the TV station one time. Somebody threw something, and I got 14 stitches right there. Easy.
Very.
I've got a lot of stitches for Rio.
Very, very quickly before we shut this podcast down, Gorilla Monsoon was also part owner, I don't know if he still was by 1985, of World Wrestling Council. So why would someone from World Wrestling Council then come threaten the WWF never to turn up again when one of the part owners was there that day?
Well, you gotta ask Hulk. So Gorilla Monsoon, it was never explained to me, and I never knew Carlos had any partners. They never let that out. So, and Abdullah, I think, owned a part of it. Mm-hmm. So, and Abdullah had told Brody that he needed to buy in. And I don't think Carlos had anything against that, because now these guys were over. They could come in and draw some money. And they've drawn some huge houses in Puerto Rico. The biggest one I heard was Abdullah and Carlos, those two guys who had battled for years. That's the longest angle I've ever seen in my life. Talking about waiting to tell a story. It's still going on, really. If Carlos could get in the ring and Abdullah could get in the ring, they'd still have a match. Some would be like crap. But that feud went on for 20 years. I had just taken over the book down there, and Abdullah looked at me and he says, "What do you want me and Carlos to do?" And I went, "Well, hell, I don't know. Do what you usually do, I guess. Go out there and beat each other up, cut yourselves like idiots, bleed all over the place, and fight back to the dressing room." "Oh, is that what you want?" And I said, "Yeah, well, won't you? You can do that, right?" Oh yeah, we can do that." I think he wanted me to call some fantastic finish, but I never saw him do one. I just said, just do what you regularly do, because how can you change that? They've done that for 15 years up to then, or 20, or 10 at least, so they knew how to do that. And Puerto Rico was a very, very dangerous place for the rudos. Rudos is Spanish for heels, I guess. El rudo.
You know what? You should have just told Abby, I want to see some flying head scissors out there, some hurricanranas. Yeah. Can you do a shooting star press? That'd be great.
Can you do? Yeah, and I want to see all this stuff and go about. Well, they never went more than 10 minutes anyway. So
I want you to do an hour Broadway, Abby, and then
I should have told him that. I said, I want you to go through an hour, and then the bell will ring, and you guys give up and give each other a big hug while we call the blood bank out, and we'll get that saved up.
All right, then. This has been a bumper episode. So much news to get through. We're not even going to get to the Hulk Hogan Harley Race story. We'll save that for a future episode. But for now, thank you very much for watching. We've got books and t-shirts and everything. You know what they are. And we will be back on Tuesday. We're on every Friday, every Tuesday. And on the Tuesday episodes, it's Ask Dutch Anything. Questions for Dutch at gmail.com is where you email if you want your question asked to the crafty veteran Dirty Dutch Mantell on a future episode. But for now, yes, Dutch.
But the future episode, hopefully, we're going to get Tony Schiavone on here.
That'd be nice.
Oh, yeah, if I can get him. And he'd be a great guy to have. And he's went through the history of WCW, and he's a knowledgeable guy. So are we signing off here, Mr.?
Yep. You nearly called me Roberts again that time. Do you remember? Do you remember that you forgot my surname? You called me Mr. Robertson.
I've been hit on the head a couple 100,000 times.
I know. But I thought I'd bring it up for you just now.
Mr. Robinson. Did I call you that?
You called me something like that once, yeah. You just went, Mr. Roberts, I don't know. Anyway, it came out as Robertson. But anyway, for now, thank you very much for watching We the People.
We the People.